They're not announcing it on Wall Street. They're not broadcasting it on the news. But while no one's paying attention, some of America's most iconic companies' names you've grown up with, trusted, and maybe even visited are quietly packing their bags and heading north to Canada. Why? Tax breaks, sure. Political shifts, absolutely. But beneath the headlines, there's something deeper, something the media won't say out loud. While the U.S. wrestles with rising tariffs, unstable energy grids, and red tape at every turn, Canada is offering clean hydropower, streamlined regulations and incentives that make CEOs do double takes. And the result, an industrial migration that's not just shifting supply chains, it's reshaping entire towns, shrinking job markets, and rewriting what Made in America really means. From soda giants and car manufacturers to the very aluminum that wraps your groceries, this quiet exodus is already affecting your daily life, your budget, your travel, and the places you once thought would always hum with American industry. So stick around, because the names on this list will shock you, and the reasons will open your eyes. Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe, give this video a like, and drop a comment below. Do you think Made in the USA still holds the same power it used to? Because after this, you might never look at your road trip or your grocery cart the same way again. Let's get into it. Number 1. Coca-Cola. The red and white icon of American life, from baseball games to backyard BBQs, is quietly slipping across the northern border. While millions of Americans still reach for a Coke without a second thought, the company behind the fizz is already shifting gears. Without headlines, without press releases, Coca-Cola has begun restructuring its operations to lean more heavily on Canadian resources, and the implications are bigger than anyone realizes. The move wasn't loud. No grand announcement, no farewell tour. Just a new packaging plant quietly opening in Ontario. A discreet aluminum supply contract signed in Quebec. From the outside, it might look like simple expansion. But dig deeper, and it's a strategic escape. A methodical relocation triggered by skyrocketing tariffs and economic pressure inside the United States. When the U.S. government slapped heavy tariffs on imported aluminum, Coca-Cola's production costs exploded. The cost of a can, a fundamental part of its product, ballooned to the point where either profits had to shrink or prices had to rise. But instead of bleeding revenue or risking customer backlash, Coca-Cola chose a third path: move north and keep it quiet. This isn't just about soda cans, it's about identity. Coca-Cola has always positioned itself as the drink of America, woven into the very fabric of its culture. Now that very symbol of Americana is slipping through our fingers. The consequences are starting to ripple out. Jobs in US-based plants are evaporating one shift at a time. Some plants are quietly scaling back production, others are shutting down altogether. Meanwhile, Canadian facilities are coming online and ramping up. As more operations migrate, the odds increase that the Coke in your fridge might soon carry a label that says "Made in Canada." But this shift isn't just about economics. It's about resilience, survival, and what companies are willing to do when backed into a corner. Canada isn't just cheaper, it's smarter. The country offers consistent access to hydroelectric power, reducing long-term energy costs. Its political and regulatory environment is more stable. And perhaps most critically, Canada isn't engaged in a self-destructive trade war that punishes its own producers. For Coca-Cola, this isn't treason. It's simple business math. Still, the cultural loss is hard to ignore. When a company like Coca-Cola begins pulling out of the US, it sets a precedent. If the quintessential American brand is willing to ghost the market that made it a global empire, what's stopping the rest? The truth is, they're already moving too. Coca-Cola is simply the canary in the coal mine, a symbol of what's to come if systemic problems remain unaddressed. In communities that once depended on Coca-Cola jobs, the departure is already being felt. Local suppliers, bottle makers, truckers, label printers are watching contracts dry up. Economic stability in towns that built their lives around this industry is starting to fracture. And it's not just about the immediate job loss. It's the ecosystem that sustains those jobs: diners near the factory, small shops run by families of plant workers, even local schools funded by industrial taxes. All of it slowly begins to erode when the anchor tenant quietly leaves. Most Americans won't notice, at least not right away. The branding hasn't changed. The commercials still air. The shelves are still stocked. But beneath that surface, a fundamental shift is underway. Coca-Cola is hedging its bets, and it's not alone. When the dust settles, what once felt like an isolated cost-saving decision will reveal itself as a turning point, a signal that doing business in America is no longer the default option for American companies. So the next time you crack open a cold can of Coke, ask yourself, where was this made and what does it say about where we're headed? Because if Coca-Cola is packing up without saying goodbye, the future of American manufacturing might already be headed out the door, and most of us haven't even noticed. Number 2, General Motors. For decades, General Motors stood as a symbol of American strength. From the heart of Detroit, GM was more than a car company. It was a cornerstone of identity, a lifeline for blue-collar towns, and a reason millions of Americans had pride in what they drove. But in 2025, that symbol is quietly peeling away one calculated move at a time. While many Americans are distracted by rising car prices and vague news about global supply chain issues, GM is already deep into a cross-border transformation, one that could permanently reshape the American automotive landscape. It didn't happen overnight. GM didn't hold a press conference to announce it was shifting loyalty. No one waved goodbye from the factory gates, but the money told the story. Since 2020, General Motors has invested over $2.6 billion into Canada, especially Ontario and Quebec. That figure isn't pocket change. It's a signal, a commitment, and for U.S. workers, a red flag waving in silence. What's driving this migration? Tariffs. When the U.S. doubled down on steel and aluminum tariffs, especially hitting Canadian imports by up to 50%, GM's carefully tuned supply chain started hemorrhaging money. The price of parts skyrocketed. Assembly became a logistical nightmare. Every dollar spent keeping production in the U.S. was a dollar wasted compared to what could be saved just across the border. And while American consumers watched their vehicle prices climb by over $7,000 in just a few years, GM was playing a very different game behind the scenes, chess, not checkers. One of the first clear signs was the massive investment in electric vehicle manufacturing in St. Catharines, Ontario. At first it seemed like diversification, but when GM partnered with POSCO to build a billion-dollar cathode active material plant in Bécancour, Quebec, a key piece of the EV battery puzzle, it became obvious this wasn't about spreading out risk. It was about carving out a future in Canada. Meanwhile, the story back home is far more bleak. The CAMI assembly plant in Ingersoll, Ontario, once a thriving hub, had to lay off around 200 workers in April 2025 to retool for next-gen models. Translation: shut it down now, maybe reopen it later. Maybe. History tells us those temporary closures often become permanent, especially when more efficient plants exist elsewhere. While factories in Michigan and Ohio hit the brakes, GM was hiring engineers in Ontario and Quebec like it was 1999 again. Hundreds of high-skilled jobs, robotics, automation, smart manufacturing, were filled quietly with no flashy headlines, just job listings and NDAs. And here's where it gets more unsettling. The most advanced work, the next-generation battery tech, the EV drive units, the innovation labs, aren't being built in the US. They're being built in Canada. The GM badge may still gleam under dealership lights in Texas, Arizona, and Illinois, but the brains behind those cars, the battery packs powering them, the software systems that run them, all of that, is now being engineered under the cold skies of Ontario and Quebec. It's not just about cost anymore. It's about logistics, stability, and long-term planning. Canadian provinces are offering clean hydroelectric power, predictable energy pricing, and a government that's aggressively investing in the EV economy. In contrast, the U.S. has become a minefield of energy volatility, labor disputes, and trade policy whiplash. In that environment, loyalty fades. Business takes the path of least resistance. And what happens when the largest players leave quietly, smaller companies follow? Communities shrink, real estate values drop, schools close classrooms, small-town economies begin to hollow out slowly, subtly but surely. The very fabric of middle-class America, once stitched together by industries like GM, begins to unravel. No one wants to admit it, but the writing is on the wall. General Motors is no longer just a Detroit story, it's now a Canadian one. Not in name, but in practice. This isn't about abandoning America, it's about outgrowing it. And if GM, the godfather of American cars, has already shifted its future north, the question isn't if others will follow, it's how fast. So next time you see a shiny electric SUV roll by, don't just look at the model. Ask where it came from. Because it might say Chevrolet or Buick on the back, but the real story is written in steel software and Canadian soil. Number 3, Alcoa, the aluminum giant that's melting into Canada. You don't hear much about aluminum these days. It doesn't trend on social media, and it doesn't make headlines unless something catches fire. But aluminum is everywhere. Your soda, your car hood, your window frame, your airplane wing. And behind that essential metal is a name that once represented the core of American industrial power, Alcoa. For over a century, Alcoa helped build the modern United States. But in 2025, the giant is no longer roaring, it's quietly retreating. And it's not retreating into irrelevance. It's moving north, to Canada. Alcoa has been battered by a perfect industrial storm this year. Electricity prices in the US have exploded thanks to an aging, grid-soaring demand and climate-related disruptions. American smelters already operating on thin margins are deteriorating. On top of that, a 25% tariff on imported aluminum imposed by the US government to protect domestic production has had a devastating boomerang effect. Rather than stabilizing the industry, it's driving companies like Alcoa to do the math and flee. The shift didn't come with an announcement. No press conference, no bold statements. Instead, Alcoa turned off the lights on one night shift in Houston. Then it redirected a few shipments through Montreal. Then it signed a hydroelectric power contract in Quebec that stretches all the way to 2040. And before anyone could truly react, it was clear Alcoa isn't just scaling operations in Canada, it's building its future there. The reasons are as cold and logical as the smelting process itself. Quebec offers abundant, affordable hydropower. We're talking 100 megawatts locked in through 2040, enough to power a small nation. In contrast, American plants struggle with unstable grids and rising costs that make every ton of aluminum more expensive to produce. The numbers don't lie. In Q1 of 2025, Alcoa reported a $20 million hit from tariffs alone. That number is projected to reach $90 million by Q2. These aren't soft warnings, they're flashing red alarms, and Alcoa is responding by pulling levers most Americans can't see. And the fallout, it's already underway. Entire towns in Kentucky, Texas, and Pennsylvania that once thrived around Alcoa's molten operations are now stuck in economic limbo. Smelters go idle. Truckers find their routes canceled. Local suppliers stop getting calls. And yet there's no panic because the change is slow. That's what makes it so dangerous. It's a quiet relocation, one shipment at a time, one contract at a time, until one day the town realizes its biggest employer is gone. And let's be clear, this isn't temporary. Alcoa isn't pausing its US operations to reevaluate. It's investing billions into smelters in Canada while leaving American facilities in limbo. And they're not shy about it either. The long-term energy deals, the infrastructure development, and the production shift, all of it signals a committed pivot northward. Even as US politicians argue about reviving manufacturing, the reality is that industrial giants like Alcoa are already laying the foundation for the next 20 years in Canadian soil. The broader implications are massive. When aluminum leaves, so do downstream industries, automakers, aerospace electronics, even food and beverage companies. And that means job losses multiply. This isn't just about one company's bottom line, it's about the collapse of an entire value chain that American cities once relied on. But what's most unsettling is how few people are noticing. Unlike the closure of a flashy tech startup or a celebrity-branded business, the death of heavy industry doesn't come with Instagram posts or viral outrage. It comes with silence, empty parking lots, dimmed furnaces. For the American worker, it feels like the future is being built somewhere else because it is. Alcoa's story is a warning and perhaps a prophecy. When even raw materials are now too expensive to make in the US, what happens next? If aluminum, a basic building block of everything modern, is no longer American-made, what truly is? The next time you crack open a cold drink, run your fingers over the smooth metal and ask, where was this made? If the answer is Canada, don't be surprised. The shift already happened. You just didn't see it until now. Number 4. Campbell Soup. For generations, Campbell Soup has been a symbol of American comfort. From war-era kitchens to modern-day pantries, the iconic red and white label has offered a sense of warmth and familiarity in every spoonful. But in 2025, that familiar symbol is undergoing a quiet transformation, one that most Americans haven't noticed, but will soon feel. Because while Campbell's image remains proudly American, its operations are crossing the border quietly and strategically into Canada. The reason: aluminum. Over 90% of Campbell's products come in aluminum cans. And in the wake of punishing U.S. tariffs and unstable supply chains, the cost of that aluminum has skyrocketed. Add to that surging energy prices, logistical bottlenecks, and a fragile manufacturing ecosystem, and Campbell found itself facing a harsh choice: raise prices and risk losing budget-conscious customers, or find a cheaper, more stable place to do business. The company chose the latter. There were no headlines, no sweeping statements, just subtle shifts. New packaging contracts started appearing in Ontario. Job listings for Campbell's operations quietly emerged in Toronto and London. Production tasks that once belonged to plants in Ohio or Pennsylvania were redirected north. It's not a mass exodus yet, but it's a clear directional move, and it speaks volumes about the broader crisis in American manufacturing. And it's not just the soup inside the can that's at stake. Each Campbell product depends on a vast network of American labor farmers in Michigan growing carrots and tomatoes, steelworkers crafting can linings, truckers transporting goods across the country, printing companies making labels in rural Ohio. When one part of that chain migrates, even if it's just the packaging, the economic ripple effect is brutal. Contracts dry up, jobs vanish, communities begin to unravel slowly but unmistakably. In its latest earnings call, Campbell revised its projected growth rate from a healthy 11% to just 6 to 8%, blaming escalating aluminum and steel costs for a projected $90 million hit in Q2 alone. That's not just a bad quarter, it's a flashing warning sign. And Canada, with its clean hydropower stable aluminum supply and friendlier industrial policies, looks more and more like the lifeboat Campbell's executives are ready to climb aboard. This quiet migration isn't just about soup, it's a symptom of a deeper disease. When the cost of putting basic food in a can becomes economically unviable in the US, what does that say about the health of the nation's supply chain? When a 1779 can of chicken noodle soup suddenly becomes $2.19 working families notice, and when the company behind that can quietly moves out to protect its margins, we all lose something: job stability and a piece of our cultural identity. The truly disturbing part is that none of this has sparked public outcry. There are no viral hashtags, no Senate hearings, no demands for a Save Campbell's bailout. That's because the shift is slow and silent. By the time consumers see Made in Canada on their soup can, the decision will have long been made, the jobs long gone, and the factories long closed. This isn't a hypothetical. It's already happening. Campbell is now sourcing more of its aluminum from Canada, packaging more cans abroad, and relying less on American infrastructure. And once that muscle memory sets in, once a company learns to operate more efficiently across the border, it rarely looks back. So the next time you reach for a can of tomato soup, pause. Not just to check the price, but to look at the fine print. Because behind that warm bowl may lie a cold truth: one more piece of the American economy has quietly packed up and left the kitchen. Number 5. Tesla. Tesla was supposed to be the crown jewel of American innovation, the Silicon Valley dream on 4 wheels. From battery breakthroughs to the futuristic hum of the Cybertruck, it was the poster child for American technological dominance. But in 2025, the reality is far more complex. While the Tesla brand still dazzles Wall Street and headlines remain obsessed with Elon Musk's every tweet behind the scenes, a quiet revolution is underway. And it's not happening in California, Nevada, or Texas. It's happening in Canada. Unlike traditional manufacturers, Tesla didn't need to shutter a giant facility to make the shift obvious. There were no pink slips en masse, no dramatic closures. Instead, they executed a cold, calculated maneuver, moving blueprints, talent, and entire production ecosystems across the northern border. It began subtly. A robotics factory in Markham, Ontario, expanded its role in Tesla's automation division. Soon after, job listings exploded for software engineers, AI specialists, and industrial designers, not in Fremont, but just outside Toronto. Then came the whispers of a full-stack battery supply chain in Quebec, supported by local governments hungry for investment and willing to grease the wheels with infrastructure tax incentives and fast-track approvals. Why Canada? The answer, like most industrial shifts, boils down to math. While the US struggles with power grid instability, rolling blackouts, and soaring electricity bills, Canada offers something far more appealing: hydroelectric energy that is cheap, reliable, and clean. In an industry where energy consumption is measured in gigawatts, this difference isn't minor, it's defining. The Canadian government, meanwhile, has deployed a massive $52.5 billion federal-provincial investment strategy focused entirely on building the world's most attractive battery ecosystem. Rare earth minerals like lithium and graphite Canada has them. Environmental reviews streamlined. Labor conditions predictable. The message to Tesla was clear: build the future here, sure. And Tesla listened. In Quebec, where the company is now laying the groundwork for battery material refinement and advanced manufacturing, the ecosystem is being built from the ground up. It's not just about bolting together cars, it's about controlling the entire process from mineral extraction to AI-powered battery optimization. This is the next frontier of mobility, and it's not being built in the land of the free, it's being engineered in the land of the maple leaf. Critics might argue this is just expansion, not abandonment. After all, Tesla still operates gigafactories in the US. But look closer. Deadlines have slipped. Construction has slowed. Timelines for new US projects have quietly gone dark. And while Tesla's Canadian footprint grows, the American one stagnates. Even more telling is the ripple effect. When Tesla shifts direction, its entire supply chain follows. That means chip manufacturers, robotics firms, energy storage specialists, and AI developers, many of them American, are being pulled into Canada's orbit. When the anchor tenant moves, the neighborhood changes. And if Tesla's innovation hub relocates, the gravitational center of the EV industry begins to shift with it. The irony is that this is all happening while political debates rage in the US over EV tax credits, union showdowns, and regulatory red tape. While lawmakers argue, Canada acts. While the US dithers, Tesla builds, in silence, with precision, and without apology. It's not just about business efficiency, it's about securing the future. Tesla isn't chasing quarterly profits, it's planting the seeds of long-term dominance. That Cybertruck you've been waiting for, it might still have an American badge, but the AI that drives it, the battery that powers it, and the hands that built it may all trace back to Canada. And that's what should worry everyone. Because if the most advanced, future-facing company in America no longer sees America as the best place to build the future, what does that say about where we're headed? The Tesla dream hasn't died, it's just moved north. And the rest of the American industrial base may not be far behind. And the last one, Ford. Few brands are as deeply woven into the fabric of America as Ford. From the Model T to the roaring F-150, Ford built more than vehicles, it built the American identity. It's been the heart of blue-collar pride, the soul of the Midwest, the name tattooed across generations of muscle and grit. But today, something's changed. Quietly, without fanfare, Ford is shifting gears, and the direction it's heading, not toward Detroit, not toward Ohio or Texas, but north, to Canada. In 2024, Ford made a move that barely registered in the national conversation, a $2.3 billion investment into its Oakville, Ontario plant. At first glance, it seemed like another expansion. But dig deeper and you see something far more seismic, a fundamental redrawing of where Ford plans to build its future. Originally, Oakville was slated to produce electric SUVs. But when battery costs ballooned and consumer enthusiasm cooled, Ford pivoted. The new plan doubled down on their best-selling, most profitable vehicle, the Super Duty truck. And not in Kentucky, not in Michigan, but in Canada. Why Oakville? Because the math was simple. Ontario runs on more than 90% clean hydroelectric energy, offering Ford long-term cost savings, green credentials, and a stable power supply. Add to that government-backed tax incentives and smoother labor negotiations, and the equation becomes undeniable. The result? Over 1,800 jobs secured in Canada. A production strategy rebuilt around Canadian logistics. And thousands of U.S. job suppliers and contracts hanging in the balance. Ford isn't leaving America with a bang, it's slipping away one contract at a time. Parts suppliers in Indiana are losing bids to counterparts in Quebec. Shipping lanes are being rerouted. Logistics hubs, once humming with activity, are quieting. And for every factory that doesn't expand, for every plant that pauses production, a small American town inches closer to economic irrelevance. This isn't just a business decision, it's a psychological shift. Ford once symbolized a certain kind of American resilience, a belief that no matter how hard things got, we'd keep building, keep producing, keep making things with our hands and our minds. But in the boardrooms of 2025, that spirit is being overridden by cold calculations and global cost-benefit analyses. Canada isn't just offering cheaper operations, it's offering certainty. And in a business climate defined by uncertainty, that's gold. Meanwhile, the American side of the border is grappling with runaway energy costs, drawn-out labor negotiations, and a regulatory environment that often feels more punishing than supportive. Building a truck in the U.S. has become a logistical headache, and Ford, like its competitors, is choosing relief over nostalgia. Still, the public remains mostly unaware. Super Duty trucks still roar down American highways. Ford logos still gleam in suburban driveways. But the next time you pass one, look closer, because the steel might have been forged in Canada. The assembly line might have been powered by Ontario's hydro grid, and the workers who built it might be on lunch break at a Tim Hortons. This is the slow drip of industrial migration. Less dramatic than factory closures, but just as devastating. Ford hasn't abandoned America, but it's clearly hedging its bets. And the real danger is that this becomes the new normal, an era where American brands continue to fly the flag while quietly building somewhere else. So what happens when Ford, the company that once put the world on wheels, decides the road ahead is paved in Canadian concrete? What happens when the most American of vehicles becomes a product of a different country's stability? We don't have to imagine it. It's happening now. One truck, one plant, one quiet contract at a time. What you've just seen isn't a coincidence, it's a pattern. One by one, America's most iconic companies are shifting operations north, chasing lower costs, cleaner energy, and more stable policies. From Coca-Cola to Ford, the factories may still whisper red, white, and blue, but their foundations are now being laid in Canadian soil. This isn't just about business. It's about jobs, lost towns hollowed out, and a national identity slowly slipping away. If even our most trusted brands are walking out the back door, what's left holding the roof up? If this opened your eyes, don't let it stop here. Like this video, share it with someone who still believes Made in the USA means what it used to, and subscribe for more stories the media won't tell you. Because the next shift is already happening and you deserve to see it coming.